Hello. I got no podium. I can no thing. Good afternoon. This special City Council workshop, 5 p.m. Tuesday, January 14th. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public were duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Nicole, you want to do a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Streetman. Here. Councilmember Myers.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Hahn.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Goshen.
Here.
Mayor Pounds.
Here.
Do you have a quorum?
Thank you. First item is citizens' comments.
Carrie Solomon.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The beach is challenging. You guys, City Council has spent gobs of resources, hours and hours focusing on emergency measures and millions of dollars. And homeowners have suffered millions of dollars of damages that are still ongoing in spite of all this. And the truth is, the system just isn't working. We need a new model. And there are models out there that are successfully used around South Carolina and around the world, and I think you're going to hear about some of that with the Beach Committee presentation. Basically focuses on division of responsibilities, where the city is responsible for the public beach, maintaining the public beach, and all that beach renourishment involves, which I'm excited for you to hear, and I hope you'll take seriously. And that means that the property owner is responsible for maintaining their own private property. And that's the way it should be. And I think we all would support that. But property owners want to be able to have the freedom to do what they want to do legally within the law of South Carolina. They want to be able to protect their property and their structures. I'm talking about hard erosion structures, or specifically subsurface structures. These are buried, they're safe, they're effective, and even in the setting of a renourished beach, if the water is pushed further out, they are still necessary. There's good data to suggest that when installed properly, these can be very effective, not only at protecting properties during severe extreme situations, but they can also be helpful for the beach. If the renourishment is done, and I hope that it will be, extreme events are still going to happen. Unfortunately, our climate environment today is different than when this ordinance was written 40 years ago. We have global warming, we have rising seas, we have more frequent storms and stronger storms. Homeowners want protection. Even if this thing never becomes exposed during time of extreme weather, a tropical storm or a hurricane, if it is exposed, thank God it's exposed. We all want that sort of insurance and protection for our property. For those homeowners who want to be able to install them, they are legal in South Carolina if they're outside of the state's jurisdiction. Cindy and I actually presented to DHAC a year ago, and they wished us well and thought our solution was a good one. For homeowners that choose not to, that's okay. But the homeowners are still responsible for maintaining their own property, and the city's responsible for maintaining the beach, and that's the way it should be. I'm requesting that the hard erosion structure language in the ordinance be removed. I think that's an easy, simple solution for everyone to move forward. It's a solution that's similar to what our neighboring islands are with Sullivan's Island, Seabrook, Kiowa, Hilton Head, amongst others. It's a solution that's been very successful around the world. And the truth is, our property owners want the same opportunities as our property owners on our neighboring islands. And IOP just has to trust we'll do the right thing. If a dispute arises, it's between the homeowner and the state. The city's out of it. They're not involved. And that's really the goal, to allow homeowners the opportunity to protect their property and their structures. Removing the language is the most straightforward way to get there. It also allows this opportunity to be available for everybody on the entire island. The erosion is not just the south end. We have some on 55th, and who knows where it's going to be 10 years from now. If we can do this, it'll allow us to finally put the past behind us and move forward as one voice where the residents and the city work together to maintain and let the beach prosper. Thank you.
Jimmy Bernstein.
Thank you for letting me speak, and a Happy New Year to everybody here. I think that this gentleman was very eloquent in what he presented, and I would echo all of his thoughts with exclamation marks. When I say my name, I no longer have a street address. It's just the ocean. I live on Beechwood East, which is a fabulous city in fabulous street in Wild Dunes. And unfortunately, I've been to the south side and seen the properties there, And whether it's the south side or Beechwood East, I can tell you I feel the same emotion to property owners that have experienced damage to their property. And why we can't find better solutions, I don't know if it's in your jurisdiction or the state's jurisdiction, but something should happen that enables the property owners to protect the homes that they cherish. I don't put myself ahead of anybody else. I am an individual, and I'm speaking as an individual, and I can tell you that I have worked with Douglas Carr and the mayor. I've seen them. Scott Pierce has walked the beach. I've seen him. Mr. Trainum has walked the beach. I've tried to educate myself to what we can do. And certainly I want to really compliment Douglas, because he and I have worked very closely together. And I think although he has a great deal of sympathy towards my cause and recognizes my challenges, I'm here to tell you that my house that the ocean has gone halfway through my house to the street. And my garage pad, which had been destroyed during the storm a year ago in December, the tropical storm, I just have rebuilt it. And today it sits almost ready to fall again because the sand has eroded. But that's just and I don't want to put myself ahead of anybody else. I think our community is Isle of Palms. I want it to be a desirable destination for anybody and everyone wanting to come and enjoy the beach. Today, as you look out my backyard, and Randy and I walked it today, you'll see all of this junk and garbage that's sitting in the sand that needs to be cleaned up. I can tell you, just a few months ago, I would wake up and every morning I would have a letter from
Mr. Bernstein.
OCRM telling me to send pictures of my backyard
Mr.
to
Bernstein.
clean up the debris that is there. And I faithfully undertook the task. I'd like to say I keep my side of the street clean, but it's a challenge. Today, no one has contacted me. I mean, it's cluttered. And I think that's a danger to anybody, any transit coming. And I'd like to make the beach
Mr. Bernstein.
My house is my concern.
Jimmy, we need to wrap up if you can,
Okay,
please.
I knew that I only had 3 minutes. I don't want to carry on. I just want to make the beach enjoyable for everyone and anyone coming. So that's my message.
Thank you.
Paul Conway. Dudley Spangler.
Good evening. Dudley Spangler, I live 1006 Ocean Boulevard. I've been fortunate to move here. We got paradise. We really do. And I've been fortunate to live on the ocean. Was living at 408 Ocean Boulevard in 2016 when Matthew came through. And I was sitting in bed and I heard this crack, snap, pop, and saw my beach dune platform and beach ramp floating down in the tide. Lost at least 20 feet of depth on the beach in that one storm alone. And the city came back and did the emergency dunes with scraping, etc. And that's all they've done since 2016. They've just kicked the can down the road till the next storm comes along and they emergency scrape and they just do it. And it, as Carrie said, it obviously isn't working. I think the Beach Renourishment Committee has done a great job. They've made some, I think, great recommendations that should be followed. We need a regular schedule for beach renourishment. And if we don't do something about our beach, it will start to affect tax revenues. Because vacationers on the internet information is out there the next day. I couldn't get to the beach because of this. The beach is messed up because of debris that is everywhere. People put that on the internet, and it will start to affect our tax revenues. And, you know, we need to have a plan, and we need to keep our greatest asset our greatest asset. And I agree with Carrie to get away with, delete the information on the ordinance and follow the beach committee's, ad hoc committee's instructions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Conway?
Hi, my name's Paul Conway. I live at 11 Beechwood East. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not a native South Carolinian. My wife and I started coming down here in 2005, and were first attracted, and continued to be attracted by the beauty of the low country, beauty of the beaches, beauty of the people. We fell in love with it. We bought our house on Beechwood East in 2009. When we bought it, soon after we bought it, we built a 75-foot to 100-foot boardwalk from our back steps out to the beach to go across the dunes. As we all know, those are no longer here. Echoing what we just heard, the beauty of this place is the beach. We lost that boardwalk to lost renourishment. We've lost the beach. Water's pounding up against the house. And I could sit here and say, you know, oh, woe is me. Sure. But this isn't about just me. This is about everybody on the island. This is about having beaches and capabilities and the use of the beach, which is the biggest asset we all collectively enjoy and own. So, as Tip O'Neill said, all politics are local. This is local to all of us. This is important to all of us. If, you know, I'm personally suffering, but not many people are going to feel badly for me personally, and I don't want you, I'm not up here to do that. What I feel bad for is that you can't walk in front of my house at high tide, and you can't walk there. You can walk there many hours fewer than you used to be able to do. If we lose that, we're not going to, the tax revenue goes down. It's going to happen. It's going to be on the internet. Friends tell friends, and the beauty and the attraction of this place disappears. So I appreciate all the hard work that people are putting into it. I know there's tough decisions. There's only so many dollars. But what we should do is come up with we should continue to work towards plans where we actively go through having renourishments on a regular basis, or having the funds available so we can do renourishments so we don't get in dire predicaments going forward. Thank you.
Laura Levins?
Hi, I'm Laura Levins. I live at 5 Links Clubhouse Court in Wild Dunes. And I'm here to speak not just as a full-time resident, but I'm also the chairperson for the Isle of Palms Environmental Advisory Committee. Tonight, the Beach Preservation Ad Hoc Committee is going to recommend that there be a proactive response to beach erosion by accelerating the frequency of large-scale dredging, beach renourishment projects, and to move it from every 10 years to every 8 years. This is also going to mean an acceleration in getting funding for these projects. So the committee is also going to recommend engaging both a state lobbyist, which the city already has, and also a federal lobbyist, which the city currently does not have. There's some good news. Governor McMaster just released the executive budget yesterday and said, quote, "Our state is home to some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, which supports a thriving tourism industry, contributing tens of billions," that's with a B, "of dollars to our economy annually. To protect our beaches, the executive budget provides $5 million in non-recurring renourishment grants," and that was the end of the quote. Here is our opportunity to get some, if not all, of this grant money. I implore Council to move quickly and adopt the Beach Preservation Committee's recommendations and work to secure this grant money. Time is of the essence, and it is critical that Council not let this money slip away. Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here tonight. Next item is special presentation from the Beach Preservation Ad Hoc Committee. Just quick reminder, we put this committee in place in January of last year, and Cindy, I won't steal any of your thunder, but met 25-ish times, I guess, throughout the year with a whole lot of folks from around the country and the East Coast, multiple coastal engineers. And just real quick, I think all the committee is here tonight, and just to recognize those that are here, Tim Moody on the front, Dan Schlosser, also on the front row. Cindy will be the spokesperson for the committee here in a moment, and Andrew Vega, I think, is towards the back. And then council was Katie Myers, Scott Pierce, and myself. So a lot of ground has been covered. This is first real update that city council has had from this committee. So it's been a year's worth of work in 30-ish minutes, Cindy? Somewhere in there. But again, we've said it in the meeting, but just publicly again to thank the residents that participated in that committee. It was a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort. And thank you all for doing that. So Cindy, I'm going to, thank you. And council, it's just in your paycheck, you know what I'm saying? Cindy, I'll let you take it away. Cindy was elected, nominated, voted, volunteered to be the spokesperson for the group, so thank you for doing that, Cindy. And this packet, council has had this packet for about a week to digest it. It's on the website that you can download if you want and take a gander at it, but a lot of great information. And Stephen Trainum is here tonight also, who is from CSE, our coastal engineer. So Cindy, I'll let you have it. Thank you.
All right, and I will try to keep my comments short. But I also want to emphasize right from the beginning that the individuals you were introduced to put an incredible amount of time and effort into this. I'm going to describe some of that as an introduction, but they are available for questions, as am I. So please, I will give some sort of introduction, and clearly you all are very smart individuals who I'm sure have read the packet and may have some questions, but I did want to give some basic background on how we got to where we were. I wanted to begin, of course, by, on behalf of the ad hoc committee, I wanted to thank all of you for trusting us to serve on this committee, which was a very solutions-oriented committee. We'd also like to thank Douglas and Desiree for their assistance throughout this process, because they put a lot of time outside of those committee meetings to making our meetings effective. I wanted to provide briefly some background for the recommendations you were provided in your packet and encourage you all to ultimately adopt and implement them. Before getting to the recommendations, I wanted to outline some of the resources and expertise the committee called on to inform it, because I think that gives the credence that I think these recommendations deserve. They were not just those of us sitting in the room talking to each other. We were listening and asking a lot of poignant questions. We didn't always agree with each other. We came with different backgrounds. But in the end, as you see from the recommendations, we had a lot of consensus on what we brought to y'all. So as regards research, the committee looked at IOP's beach management plan, other beach management programs, including those in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Florida. We looked at state and city ordinances and policies and the city budget. Tim may be the committee member most versed on the science of those documents, so I point him out now in case there's questions on that, because I'm likely to defer. In addition to the research we did, we met with the following individuals, which I think is an esteemed group to consider here as you look at our recommendations. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I believe it's Robert Oughton. He's Dare County's manager and county attorney. We spoke with him. It was our initial conversation regarding the actions that have been taken by that area regarding beach erosion, the results they've had, and how they've financed their initiatives. So that kind of set the table for our committee, seeing how a successful program had worked. It also allowed us to start thinking creatively. We then met with Matt Slagle from BCM, Beachfront Manager, to discuss beach preservation and discuss issues regarding the critical area, our current dune structure, and active beach, and how those were being interpreted by the state. We had multiple meetings with Stephen Trainum, Coastal Science and Engineering, regarding current state of IOP, historical trends, ideal beach profiles, and a lot of other questions. We met with representatives from the Army Corps of Engineers regarding the eligibility process for getting funding from the federal government, the financial obligations that would apply to both of us, the city and the government, the time frame if the city wanted the Army Corps to take over the care of the beach, financial obligations by both parties, as I said, the necessity of having property easements, and the current problems that have been posed in Pawleys Island, as well as whether Wild Dunes could participate if the Army Corps was involved. We met with Charlton Dessesseur, public finance attorney at Hainsworth, Sinclair & Boyd, regarding financing mechanisms available to the city, including municipal bonds and special districts. We also met with Andy Beck, then town administrator, and Sullivan's Island's Patrick O'Neill, mayor, and Dr. Nicole Elko of Elko Coastal Consulting, the environmental consultant to Sullivan's Island. We met with them regarding the state of Sullivan's Island's beaches, how they are managing erosional areas, and their thoughts on the erosion on Breach Inlet, and the impact of their groin. Again, we're looking at solutions. We've additionally met with town officials from Folly Beach, and again met with Nicole Elko, who is their consultant, and we met with town officials from Edisto Island. All of these meetings and research focused primarily on a number of issues. One was understanding the city's beach management plan and its obligations regarding maintaining a healthy beach. Another, understanding the current state of Isle of Palms Beach, including its erosional trends. We also wanted an understanding of any known causes and possible solutions to the current erosional situation. We wanted an understanding of the impact and importance of having an ideal beach, including the return on investment for the community and the state of doing so. We wanted an understanding of what Isle of Palms' ideal beach would look like. We wanted an understanding of the logistics of creating and maintaining a healthy beach. We wanted a calculation of the cost of creating and maintaining a healthy beach. We explored efficiencies and cost-reducing strategies for managing and funding a healthy beach. We also wanted an understanding of the current funding processes in place to maintain a healthy beach. And we explored additional financial sources to maintain this healthy beach. This was all done in the context of the committee wanting to put forth a roadmap for an executable 30-year plan that includes concrete action items and goals to maintain an optimal beach profile for the entire island. It was also done with the understanding that there is no current or foreseeable state of federal funding available to help, though the comments earlier give me a little boost. But that was done with the understanding that there is, as was also expressed tonight, a large ROI for beach renourishment. In fact, in 2021, it was reported that for each dollar spent for beach nourishment, the state receives over $1,200 in economic development generated by beach tourists by beach tourists. And federal, state, and local governments receive almost $130 in taxes for every dollar spent on a healthy beach. Now, turning to your packet, I want to focus on a couple of things. And again, I know you all have read these, but I just want to give you just a little bit of an outline there. Exhibit 1 was prepared based on the committee's request and informed many of our recommendations. And Exhibit 1 is the Isle of Palms Beach Management Planning Scenario. It was prepared by Coastal Science and Engineering as requested by the ad hoc committee. And this document answers the committee's questions of what a healthy beach generally, and particularly at IOP, would look like. And if we went to figure 5 on page 12 of the packet that City Council has, it gives the graph of the minimum healthy profile for each area of the beach on Isle of Palm, as well as showing the current beach volume by beach section in May of 2024. So I think as you all go through this for information, I think that that's an important graph to look at because you'll see the deficit we have and what we're aiming for. Then turning to page 17 of your packet, it provides an estimate of how much sand the city will need to provide to keep pace with erosion rates. That's an average of 68,000 cubic yards of sand per year along the south end, an additional 100,000 cubic yards of sand per year at the north end. Also on page 17, CSE recommends that renourishment project occur at an 8 to 12-year interval. On page 21, CSE costs this out for both the 8 and 10-year interval. And not to ruin the ending, but the committee recommends the 8-year scenario with a biannual review of the beach health. In addition to wanting information regarding a healthy beach, the committee also wanted a proactive set of parameters to help the city identify when a minimum beach profile exists, such that action should be taken to sustain a healthy beach profile. In other words, we wanted triggers. This is captured in Exhibit 2, which is on page 22 of the packet. Specifically, it provides a list of recommended triggers to initiate consideration by City Council of a need for either mid-scale projects such as shoal management or large-scale renourishments. Again, the biannual review of the island would involve the measurements that would put those triggers into place unless they were obvious. Recognizing the price tag of beach renourishment, the committee additionally identified possible funding sources. Some of this funding would involve council votes, while others would involve lobbying and new laws. This information is provided in detail in Exhibit 3 on page 23. And I would defer to Scott Pierce as probably being one of the most versed members of the committee on the numbers and how those were generated. So having reviewed all of this information, the ad hoc committee has made the recommendations that begin on page 3 of your packet. In summary, the recommendations include the need to raise funds for and to renourish the beach on an 8-year cycle to a minimum healthy beach volume profile, to set measurable triggers for mid-level and major renourishments so that we don't get behind the 8 ball, to seek out a second opinion on emergency protective measures as well as future beach renourishment, to establish property owners' responsibilities for maintaining dune systems within private property and enable them to do so, to act proactively to prepare and to respond to beach erosion. As evidence of the success of this committee's work, only 2 recommendations come from a majority of members rather than complete unanimity of the committee. Those recommendations involved emergency measures and hard erosion structures to protect property at the beach. As regards the recommendation regarding emergency work, a concern expressed was that emergency expenditures could deplete the funding for full renourishment and exhaust city administrators. This issue was addressed and will hopefully be resolved or mitigated by the recommendation that a separate fund be established for emergency work, that an employee be hired to work on beach-related issues, and that the prohibition on hard erosion devices be removed or amended, and property owners have responsibilities for maintaining the dune system on their property. Moreover, information was shared with the committee via Stephen Traynor that work by the city is often more practical, effective and cost-effective than one-offs by homeowners because of permitting issues, economy of scale, and the higher effectiveness of these measures when done in larger scale. As regards the hard erosion devices, as you can see from the recommendations, the majority and the minority were not unaligned on the protective nature of the devices. Rather, the difference of opinion was that the majority of the committee recommended repealing the IOP ordinance section that addresses these erosion control devices, while the minority recommended modifying the ordinance. To conclude, those recommendations were all well thought out, researched, and discussed. They are meant to address the very real and very urgent need of our island to restore our beach with the concerns of the businesses, property owners, and city considered. It is thus the committee's position that adopting these recommendations is the first and necessary step toward putting a beach management plan in place to restore our beach to an ideal profile, to develop a playbook for the city administrators and council on what to do when triggering events are identified and when emergency situations occur, to protect property as well as the beach, and to identify and adopt sustainable funding mechanisms. Thank you for letting me give that presentation.
Cindy?
And I don't know if any of the committee members had anything else to add. Otherwise, I would say if y'all have any questions, we've got everyone's here from the committee, all with a wealth of knowledge.
Cindy, you did a great job distilling a year's worth of work. Thank you for
Thank you for
doing
letting
that.
me do it.
Yeah. You know, and a number of these things, some of them we'll talk about tonight, have been implemented. We've already started the semi-annual or biannual monitoring of the beach. We've got a couple of revenue items that we'll look at tonight. So when we've established the triggers, I mean, there's some pieces that we've already put in place. So questions from council that may need to get further discussion or clarity for?
Yeah, this isn't really so much a question, but I think that this is I would call this step one. I mean, we've got a good framework here, and I think it's got to be discussed at length and in more detail by the council to understand what's involved in each one of these recommendations. I think each one of these can spin off into some work streams, but there's a lot of work ahead. I don't think this is the culmination or the end of the recommendations. It's just the beginning. And we've got a lot of work to do, especially on the funding side and the implementation side.
John?
Well, I get it, it begs the question, is what's next to me? And it seems like we need to turn these recommendations into code and formalize them into our city's policy.
Some of them, definitely.
Yeah, certainly some of them, but yeah, I would suggest that maybe the majority of them. I mean, I think, even though you say we've established triggers, I think that probably needs to be written within our beach management plan of what those triggers are. Certainly well, I could go through all of them, but I think that the next step for me is to turn this into code. And that we start living by these.
Yeah, I would agree with that, with I guess the caveat that at the same time, we have to figure out how to fund it. I mean, the
Well, yeah.
last thing I want to do is be one of those lawmakers that creates a code that we can't afford.
Yeah, that's all part of it, yeah.
Right, I mean, and that's the hard part. I mean, that is, and I think we did a pretty good job of whittling it down and getting it to, the bare minimum that we need to raise in a year in order to fund this. And also, when we were looking at it, we were typically kind of looking at it as a worst-case scenario. But it's going to be, it's not all money that we can, even at this point, we're even allowed to raise from the state's perspective. So there's work that has to be done at the state side. There's work that has to be done here. And I fully agree that we need to do all of that. But we need to figure out how to do, both of those things have to be done concurrently, I think.
Jimmy, you getting ready to say something?
Agree, and also, one source of funding that has not been mentioned is the County of Charleston. And we should really increase our efforts in our lobbying references to them and to the County Council of Charleston, because we send them so much money every year, and we need to start getting something in return. As several of the speakers have mentioned, this is a beach for everyone, not just for a few that live on the beachfront. It affects the economy of the entire county and the state. So I'm interested in looking at the state and the federal, but also going local with the County of Charleston as far as we can.
Yeah, I guess where I am on this is we've got our recommendations. The committee's codified them as far as the documentation of each section and what we need to do. The plan I thought was to bring this up to council. We're at a workshop. We're not going to be making decisions here, but we do have to figure out what the framework is to take these recommendations and I think go through each one of these one by one, determine what is the subsequent action from these recommendations. Do we accept them as a council? Do we reject them as a council? If we accept them, we're going to have to assign resources to make sure that these things get implemented. And I think that we're going to have to determine, I tend to agree, if we've got triggers, that the objective here was to enable our administration not to have to come to council every time one of these triggers is hit. We need to codify that into our plans and make sure they're actionable and make sure that it's funded. So each one of these, I think, needs to be addressed, and I think then we've got to determine who's going to be working on the actual implementation of these items. And one last thing, one of the recommendations was that a committee be formed that the ad hoc committee, may be dissolved in its current form, but that there be another resident-centric committee formed, and it can be from any part of the island. But we were talking 5 or 6 or so residents, plus a couple of council people to be the interface and to help bring those actions back to council. That may be the mechanism to kick off in parallel here to get these work streams moving.
Yeah, and I think, was it Edisto that
Yeah,
has
they
the,
have a committee like that.
committee like
Yeah.
that? Yeah, it's kind of modeling what they were doing.
Mayor?
Yep.
Well, I wasn't on council when the committee was formed, but I did keep up. I either attended
You were
the
in a lot of
meetings
meetings.
or I watched the meetings. So I attended all 24 of them in one form or another, or 25, whatever it ended up being. It seems to me, if my count's correct, you've got 21 recommendations here. 19 of them seem to be consensus, which I guess was 75% agreement or more, and just a couple of them that, that are outliers here. And of course, that's the hard erosion control structures and modifying the ordinance in some way. I tend to agree with John and some of what Scott said, and, the things that we can control right here at council level, we ought to be addressing, I think, each of these issues and deciding how we move forward with it, whether it's assigned to some committee, whether we deal with it in all of council. A couple of them are going to be pretty tough. And I asked the question the other day about the committee also, the committee that's been recommended, Beach Preservation Committee. I think, in my mind, the sooner we address that and put something like that together, the better off we are. I mean, it's a good faith measure coming out of the committee. It seems like everybody was pretty much in agreement with that. And it's just a timing issue of how quickly we can pull something like that together and keep our citizens and residents involved along the way and helping give us some recommendations on this side of an issue that's important to us, just as the Environmental Advisory Committee does on the environmental side.
We could even formalize the concept at the next council meeting in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things we kind of realized in the beginning of our committee was that the beach preservation has been something that's been talked about and even codified in the past, but then it tends to get put not on the back burner. I mean, we've done a lot of beach renourishment over the years, but it doesn't get the face that it's had for the last year and 2 years. And if we have a committee, that will help to keep it active and moving forward and forward thinking, and that to not get kind of forgotten about.
Well, I think there's a key point that we've got to recognize, and we talked about this at the committee. We're in the hole right now. And I think what a lot of these recommendations contemplate is if we can get to this, we're in a reactive mode right now. We've got a big beach renourishment that's on the docket for hopefully within the next year or two. We've got to figure out how to fund it, but our beach is unhealthy right now, and it's eroding, and it's continuing to erode. A lot of these triggers and things envision that we are at a healthy beach. So I think what we've got to do is we've got to figure out right now, it's a two-step process. One, we got to get out of the hole and get ourselves a healthy beach and figure out how to do that. And then once these recommendations are in place, hopefully what we'll do, to the best of our ability, barring any event, we're going to try to avoid getting ourselves back in this hole.
And that, having the committee doesn't cost us any money, so that's something that we can do just to keep it fresh in everybody's minds. And I think that's probably the first step. And then,
Is Deborah here?
Yeah, she's in the back.
I have a question about the disaster recovery fund that we have had on the books for many years later on in this process. As you all know, that money can be moved around. And I'm not quite sure how much it is at this point.
Almost 4 million. It's almost 3 to 4 million.
Yeah, almost 10 in the beach renourishment.
A lot of people in the past, council members have said, well, we don't want to do that because it'd be like restricted. Well, it's not restricted funds. It could be moved over to help with this emergency or this deficit that you're speaking of. And we should look at all avenues.
Great.
That's, not a drop in the bucket if it's $3 to $4 million.
Well, and I think, this came up through the committee. The next renourishment's not our issue from a financial standpoint. It's the next one and the next one and the next one in the 35 years that Cindy talked about that we financially modeled with Stephen and Company and with our financial advisor. If our revenues stay where they are, again, I think our next one's fine. I don't think we have issue there. The one outstanding that's also a to-do on this list, is to finalize a cost-sharing agreement with Wild Dunes. That's a to-do for sure, and that affects the model pretty heavily. So again, we're not trying to solve for 2026 necessarily. It's really after that we have it. John?
I agree with all that. I agree with you, but I guess I'm thinking a level up from that. There's some underlying premises, I think, that came out of the committee and within the comments of some of those that live on the beach that are pretty significant policy shifts for this city that need to be addressed. One is this notion that homeowners are responsible to protect their own property, that the city's not going to be in the business of scraping and sandbags and et cetera to protect private property. That's a policy shift. That's not the way we're behaving today. So if that is the consensus of council, we need to address that and codify that. And there's underlying, I guess, decisions, if that's the case, that if we're not going to protect property, then what are we going to allow homeowners to do? Because they're now responsible for protecting their own property, which is also within this document, but not decided. So I guess what I'm saying is there's got to be some sense of urgency around this prior to the next storm season, that we clarify this both for the city and and homeowners, so that we can start to implement and take action on both sides. And so I guess the question for me is, how do we get that done? What is the next action? Do we take that at a council meeting, start taking a group of these and start breaking them up into subsets and say, hey, we need to set policy here. We need to wrestle with this and come to a decision. Or do we kick it back to committee again? I don't know. That's what I'm wrestling with, and I would like some input on.
Yeah, and I don't disagree, but I think, one of the items also referenced in this document is a second opinion, and that could mean on everything, on, hard structures, on, the 8-year cycle, a lot of the other things we've heard from Stephen, for quite some time. We heard from Nicole Elko, who is a competitor of Stevens that works with Sullivan's and Foley. So I think, to me, that's kind of the next step personally, is we get a second opinion on specifically hard structure, on specifically our cycle, on a healthy beach profile. We've used Stephen and Company, thank goodness, for 25 years, I guess, somewhere in there, maybe with Stephen and his predecessor. It's been a great relationship, but it never hurts to have a second set of eyes. Nicole's given us that second set of eyes on a couple of topics, but I think something more formal, from a second opinion standpoint, is to me the most immediate next step, personally. And I don't disagree with you, John. I think we need to walk away from here tonight. Yes, there's some urgency for sure. We've got the Army Corps project. Almost hate to even form the words coming out of my mouth on when it's happening. We've got the shoal management project. We're still waiting on, the permit for that. So we've got two pretty significant projects coming that will hopefully take a little bit of air out of the room. But, we've been waiting 20 months on the Army Corps project roughly. But again, I think, for me, Scott, to your point, I think it's very easy at our next council meeting to put some structure and put some names on the table for this ongoing committee from a resident standpoint. I think it's an easy next step. I think we authorize some funds at our next council meeting for a second opinion to get somebody identified and make that happen fairly quickly.
Yeah, and I may be reading the room wrong, but I feel like there's a sense of urgency on determining what the residents are going to be able to do and not be able to do because of the last 21 months of erosion. So I think if we're going to address these items at the council meeting in 2 weeks, we should probably put some timeframes on, when are we going to put on the table, are we or aren't we going to look at modifying or repealing the section in the ordinance about hard structures and allow the residents to start protecting their own homes. Are we going to allow, are we going to get out of the sandbagging and the scraping and being responsible for maintaining residents' property, which I think could impact our financials going forward as well, because, a lot of people may not realize we get about $1.8 million into our beach renourishment fund every year, and everybody thinks that's available for beach renourishment. Well, we spend about $1 million plus on that, on either consulting services, scraping, sandbagging, other beach maintenance. So the amount that's actually available for a large renourishment project over the 10-year period is, maybe a third of that. So we've got to, I think we've got to address these items sooner than later. I don't want to kick this can down the road, another 6 months or a year waiting for the Army Corps or something else. So that's just my take.
Yeah,
We
and I'm
ought to
not
be very
suggesting
firm on
that at all.
expectations.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm suggesting, I think, the second opinions have been a pretty heavily discussed topic at the committee and a little bit here tonight. Again, it's just me, if we're headed down a path of a policy shift, I want another set of eyes on that before we head down that path personally. Jimmy?
How do we go
Well,
about
I think
Jimmy?
because of the excellent work by the ad hoc committee, that they've laid out for us that we don't need to be doing things that are redundant. A lot of the work has been done. We just have to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to what the recommendations are, it seems like to me. I would want to make sure we don't have to rehash all this stuff. It's an excellent piece of work that we just need to make a decision on. I would request that the next committee level that's going to be on a higher level, that it would be, have a strong emphasis on finance, because that's where it's going to lie, right there. It's how it's as Ms. Myers said, we don't want to have to do some ordinance we can't fund.
And I think, to Scott and others, there's been some pretty good work done, with, our financial advisor, with Stephen and company on the and a couple of exhibits, start addressing that. And I think if you, again, not to steal the punchline from Cindy, but, if you look at all of our assumptions on the worst-case scenario in the financial side, we're about $1 million a year short, rough numbers, in financing for a long-term basis. So it's at least something attainable. Our budget's $28 million a year, so it's $1 million-ish short that we'll need to come up with. So there's some suggestions certainly from that committee. Blair?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you, Mayor Pounds, that we need more information on some issues. The hard structure, which is sort of the elephant in the room here, is something that I can't support. And the reason I can't support it is we have passed an ordinance twice saying that you can build a hard structure if you can get an engineer to say you're not going to impact your neighbor. Nobody has ever built a hard structure because you can't get an engineer to say that. If we can get an engineer to say that, then fine, I'm all in. But if not, we around this table have all taken an oath to uphold A, the laws of South Carolina, and B, the Constitution. And that means that we have to protect everybody. We can't protect just the people that can afford to put a hard structure up. It's been suggested to me, as recently as today, that, well, it's a hard question. You're going to have to pick the people that can build a structure or pick the people that can't build a structure. And I don't agree with that. I think we have to look at the community as a whole and protect everybody. And it would be irresponsible for us, and against our oath, quite frankly, to allow hard structures if we know that a hard structure is going to impact negatively people that don't have hard structures. The rest of it, I got no problem with any of it. And whether we tax increases and other fee increases, all that is going to be necessary, obviously. How we deal with that, I don't know if that's through a referendum or if that's something this council does, or some hybrid of that. But I got no problem with any of that. Thank you.
I guess in response to that, I guess a couple things is that, this concept of the neighbor, to me, there's been some different case studies and different evidence that suggests that that's not the case, Blair. And I don't know if you've seen those or not, but there's been a lot of evidence that suggests it not only helps anybody that builds one of these structures, but also helps the neighbors and up and down the beach. And not only that, I don't want to get into a big debate on this thing here now. I think there's a time and place, and we'll come to that. But I just want to let you know, there is some different evidence that suggests that that's not the case. And as far as the constitutionality, one may say that there's a constitutional obligation to do something, because if not, there's a taking of property, which is against the Constitution. So there's arguments around the constitutionality of it on all sides.
I disagree with that.
Well, I disagree with
Very
yours.
strongly, it's not a taking, because you own to the high water mark, whatever
Yeah.
that mark may be. The point of all of this is that it is hotly contested, and we need more information.
Yeah.
And there appears to be a rush to judgment on this issue. And that is, I think, a mistake. It has to be done methodically, it has to be done with judgment.
I agree with that.
And I am not personally going to support doing anything when we have currently a majority of engineers saying, this is going to hurt the neighbor.
Well, I don't think they say that, though,
And you can go out on the
right?
beach and see the hard structure built by the Reddys, and see that very plainly. And you can see that other places on the beach. And so I can't support that. That's all I'm saying.
right.
We need more information.
Jan, I think Jan.
Oh, Jan, go ahead. Thank you. You're on mute. Jimmy Ward all over again.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is an excellent report. Thank you for all of your hard work. If we need to get to next steps, we're not going to debate items tonight. I think the first step would be to form a permanent committee. And the way to get there fastest is to ask this ad hoc committee to stay in place until we have any changes in the structure for a permanent committee. The second step then would be to prioritize this list. Let's go for the low-hanging fruit first, the items that are easiest to get done. It sounds like a hard structure is going to be one of the most difficult ones for us to tackle. We don't do that up front. You build on that until you're ready to come to a decision on that, but don't let that stop the other work from getting done. That's all I have to say for now.
Douglas Jensen.
No, I think I would pretty well echo what Jan has said, that if the staff were to take this matrix of recommendations, I think we could very easily kind of identify next steps. If they don't have money, they don't have a hard-nosed policy to it, I think we can serve that up to you and say, okay, this is the next step. And I think that probably deals with 80-90% of the matrix, and I think that leaves you the remainder of the matrix that has hard decisions or a money component that we could, we'll just have to get through those items as best we can and as quickly as we can. And I think we could do that by your council meeting. We could have kind of the next steps in the eyes of the staff prepared for your council meeting.
Could we also identify a second opinion firm and tag some funds towards that? It's a question mark, Douglas.
Yeah, I think we could certainly get, a number of names, and that to me, and maybe we keep the current ad hoc committee in place, but give a series of names and qualifications to a committee, have them opine on which, and.
Could you give us a list of potential second opinion folks that are outside the area as well? Just kind of, I think it would be good to get some really, really outside view of what's going on here.
What do you mean outside?
Outside of maybe South Carolina, I'd like to have that option to say, hey, their county used some people, it might be even some of the South Carolina consultants, but I would like to just kind of get some folks that are a little further away from us.
Like North Carolina or
Yeah.
Florida.
Georgia, Florida, yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
So by next meeting, we'll have a priority list. From staff view, we'll have a
Or a
second.
feasibility list might be a better way of saying it. Just what we can do
Yeah,
soonest.
quickly.
And, I think we'll be able to see what needs a decision from council, what doesn't, what needs funding, what doesn't.
Yep.
And we can, I think Jan's got a great point. Let's knock off the low-hanging fruit here.
Well, and a couple of them are on our agenda tonight that will wind up on the city council meeting for later this month from a revenue standpoint. So none of the current committee members went running from the room when Jan said, continue it. So I think you've just been, I think y'all just been volunteered again, which I think is a good idea. What else? Council?
Excellent job, Cindy.
Yeah, and the rest of the committee, I really just, I know it was more than what you signed up for when we started that committee, but it was, we covered some really good ground. Thank you all again for doing that, so, thank you. All right, Douglas, dashboard and short-term rental report?
Yes, I would just point out to you a few things that jumped out at us and that we're kind of dealing with. Obviously, we have a very important vacancy that we're dealing with in my office particularly.
Give you an update on
I'm
that
concerned
shortly.
about. But you all will, you'll talk about that a little bit later in the agenda. Police department is down 2 officers. And
Hang on. Hey, guys, if you can take that outside, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you.
I think we ought to take a 2-minute break. They're not going to stop talking.
Yeah, they will. Keep rocking, Douglas.
Oh, well.
Those who want to listen,
Yeah.
can listen.
Yep. Police department, down 2 officers and a code enforcement an officer. Fire department, down a firefighter and a paramedic/firefighter. On the dashboard, the only other thing that kind of jumped out at me is, and we kind of watch these construction value trends over time. We did kind of rebound from a low calendar year '23 in terms of construction value. Went from about 83 million to about 126 million in construction value, which 23 was definitely down, but we're kind of back to where we had hoped we would be. So that was good to see.
Douglas, did we have a code enforcement officer resign? There was
Yes.
2, right?
Yeah, there were 2, and one has moved back to the home from which they came. Back to
Once they came.
back to North Dakota. I think it's North Dakota, South Dakota, one of the Dakotas. In the winter.
In the winter, yeah.
His wife's work
All right,
took them back to the Dakotas.
all right.
Moving on to the short-term rental report. The only thing of note there is that it appears that the number of short-term rentals has, through the course of the year, and you'll recall that this number kind of builds throughout the year. I would say that this year is a little bit different in that regard, and I think we can attribute that to the fact that Jeannie is actually watching sales. If a property that has a short-term rental license sells, she then kind of bird dogs that license, and if it doesn't show up as a new short-term rental, she actually takes it off the program. So they're supposed to be doing that, so she'll try to proactively do that.
Great.
But that is, that's a new practice this year, so that we actually kind of have gone up, and just some may have reverted out of the program, and they would have stayed on our ledgers.
Gotcha.
Now we're actively taking those off, so.
You're saying the numbers are becoming purer and purer as we go.
So the
Yeah,
numbers are
that's great.
probably,
That's good news.
not as comparable year over years.
Okay.
And that has just kind of always happened for us.
Would you say they're relatively flat percentage-wise?
Well, I think, and the number, I mean, we're literally kind of, yes, I would say year over year, they appear to be flat, but it's hard for us to do a comparison how our current year would relate to last year, because we are actively now removing. Yeah, and this month is, I think it's 2 down from last month, and that's because of that.
Jan, you got a
That's all.
question? Sorry, Douglas.
You're on mute, Jan.
Just one comment. The thing to note that I've noticed is that the number of primary residents, the percentage of primary residences on the island has remained constant. The short-term rentals go up and down, fluctuates, but it seems to just affect second homeowners, second homes, not the number of primary residents. So we do have some stability on the island now. That's it.
Douglas, what else?
That's all I have on those. You have your departmental reports
Yep.
in your packet. They're all here if there are any questions about those.
Questions on the reports? Deborah, you need a mic and a chair.
I'm gonna
Watch
let you
your
sit.
step.
You want to sit right
Sit right
here?
here.
Sit in the hot seat. Got it warmed up for you. Right here.
So next we'll move to financial review. We've got the financial statements. Deborah, if you'll take us through, already halfway through the year.
Yes, sir.
Hard to believe.
Time for a new budget.
Huh?
Time for a new budget.
That's exactly right.
Just about.
Starts this month.
So I just wanted to give a brief overview, just for the essence of time. Just comparing the last 4-year average. Total revenues, we are currently at 37%, and our last 4-year average is 40% for revenue and 41% for expenses versus the 45%. So it looks like we're tracking and trending to where we normally are. General revenue, it looks like the 4-year average is about 29%, and we're at 27%, versus expenses 47%, and we are at 47%. And our year-to-date target is 50%. So as we have historically seen, our revenues are coming in a little bit slow, which is a timing difference, but of course, they always make up to our budget that we anticipate. And historically, we've seen that the majority of the, or at least 50% of the property taxes arrive in February because they're due by tomorrow to the county and paid to us in February.
Deborah, quick question on the revenue. The marina revenue is up like 169, we're 169% of total year already.
Yes.
965 actual versus 570 budget. What's driving all that?
That driving factor is the fact that the marina did pay additional rent for their sales. They have a clause in their lease where they, if they're over a certain.
Is the restaurant or the marina?
It's actually both.
Okay, okay, so can you just take it to do, I would like to see kind of how that's coming in. That's good news.
Yes.
And if there's a way that we can product line those out and just see kind of what revenues are coming in above the rent, I think that's
Absolutely.
very good news.
Yeah, I'd like to see that myself.
Absolutely. But the biggest driving factor there is the fact that we are recognizing grant income for the public dock.
That's the grant income in here?
Yes. For the public dock.
Yeah, I thought
So
that came
we-
in last year, or maybe I'm,
Well, we don't recognize the revenue until we actually do
Get
the
it.
expenditure. So when we receive the funds, we put it into, receivable until we actually spend the money, and then it's recognized as revenue.
okay, so maybe just, if we can get
I'll
a
do a
breakout next
breakdown.
month of what that
Actually, yeah, I'll do a
965
breakdown for
revenue
you.
is, or whatever that month, whatever next month is.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and the grant too, because that's a one-time,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
separate that out, because that's a one-time.
Yes, we did recognize some of it last year, and as the expenses continue to come in, we recognize it
And I
some
got
this year as well.
another question about the marina.
Sure.
Now that we've got and maybe this is something we need to get an opinion on or what have you, but I believe that since we've now made the public dock public,
Mm-hmm.
we're not anticipating collecting fees on any of that, that now would probably be best separated out of the enterprise fund and into a general fund or some other fund. So the assets, in other words, like, we don't want the depreciation from that dock to be bounced up against the restaurant or the marina revenues. And I think that the treatment of that might be that we take that $1.7 million out of the marina fund and any future costs associated with that and put that into either a general fund or some other fund.
All other,
Is it all, yeah.
all other at the bottom.
Yeah, just definitely out of the enterprise fund because
Yeah.
it's not an enterprise asset any longer.
Right. Enterprise, it works, it's like private business.
Right.
It basically functions that way. But I do agree that, it's no longer applicable.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And on to the second page where we have our cash balances. We currently have $47 million. 45 million of that, of course, is in investment accounts, and 2 million is in operating account. And the reason why that operating account budget number is higher is because we have, a lot of expenses coming through in January, some leases, so we want to keep some money in there to cover all those expenses. We did recognize, we received $1.25 million in a state grant in December, and that is earmarked for the storm water drainage improvement on 38th and 41st. As you have also stated, we are starting the budget process, so we will meet with the department heads this week to discuss our capital needs. And as you saw, we are performing much better in business licenses and building permits than we did last year this time. On our,
Excuse me, just a quick note. On the disaster recovery, we talked about earlier, I do clear to see it was 3.3 million. This time last year, it's 2.9 million. Is there a trend of an increase in that fund balance? Could that be extrapolated out in like past years? Or do you foresee us being able to maybe look forward to an increase in that balance, cash balance of $400,000 a year? Or is there other factors that would play into that, do you know?
I mean, that's the one we decide what to put in that fund.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
about 150, that's probably
Most
related
of-
to interest.
How
Yeah.
much did we put in the last budget? I can't remember.
It wasn't much.
What,
it wa-
50
I think
maybe?
it was 5%, but I can't remember the dollar amount.
Yeah,
I have to
okay.
get back with you on
Which,
that.
see,
But
that's 3.3 million, and the beach preservation is 9.6.
right, and the majority of this is just coming from monthly interest.
Yes. Right, thank you.
We have our cash balances and they're all there. If you have any questions, just let me know. And as we're going to move on to tourism funds.
Could you stop on that page for just a minute?
Which, sure.
Go back one, or no, the next one.
That one.
Yeah. We've had a noticeable change here, I think, and and thank you very much for putting the beach renourishment in there, and I think some other numbers. I think since the last several months, you've updated some of the other projects in there, but this is forecasting that if we do everything and don't finance, that we're going to be left with $2 million out of the 47.
Except,
And-
let me just make one note. That's taking the full 22.6
I
beach
understand.
renourishment.
Yeah, no, well,
that
well,
was-
to finish my sentence, I know that there are things like the Wild Dunes contribution, maybe other grant money that's not in here. Regardless of that, taking from, even if we add back 5, 10, 15 million, this is projecting that our 47 goes to 2. I know that, I don't think that's going to happen, but you go over to the left there and we've got a negative 15 in the beach fund. We can't commingle a lot of these funds because they are restricted, so that even puts more pressure on being able to fund all of these because we are kind of treating this as one fund at the moment. So I've just put it out here for council. I think that, from a Ways and Means perspective, I'm hopeful that over the next couple of months, we start spending some real time kind of going through and solving for these. And then I hope also that during the budget process, we do prioritization on especially on our capital projects, and really prioritize, what we can and can't do in the foreseeable future here with the funds that we do have. I don't want to see this 47 depleted down to anywhere near this level.
Right, I don't think any of us do.
It's not.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of scared me there.
Well, that's what it says.
But it's not realistic. I mean, let's just be honest.
Well, we shouldn't
I
be
mean,
publishing unrealistic numbers.
Well,
is
you were
what-
the one that wanted the full beach
I know, I
renourishment
wanted the
piece
beach
in there.
renourishment in here, but we should have the other items in there as well. We gotta have,
You
we
don't
gotta
know
have a
what it is.
conversation. Yeah.
So we're not going to 2 million, just for residents that are still here
I
listening.
understand
So keep
that.
rocking, Deborah.
Okay, so, like I said, the funds are still coming in slowly for our tourism funds, but currently, we are showing 6% above previous year for our municipal accommodation funds. For state accommodation funds, we are showing 6% than we were last year this time. For the pass-through is 13%. So the tourism's funds are starting to pick up and showing improvements or positive variances than we were previous year. For hospitality, we're at 5% higher than we were last year through that collection period. Beach preservation, of course, is the same, and it's 6%. And then our local option tax is a little lower, so it's 1%. But a negative 1%. We're 1% behind where we were previous year. God bless you. And then, of course, all of the project worksheets. And then there is another item on the list, which.
Deborah, sorry to be a pain, but
No,
I
you're
got
fine.
one more request.
Go ahead.
When I go through the detailed sheets, like for the accommodations tax and all, how do we, and don't have to answer it right now, how do we tie that back to the revenues on the summary sheet? Because I try to do that and I can't get from, the detail sheets don't necessarily tie back to the summary sheets. And I'm trying to understand, again, maybe take a look at it, and maybe it's because they're a month lag on the detail sheets from what's on the accrual sheets or what have you. But when I look at a, hospitality tax or one of the other categories and try to tie it back to the summary, I can't get there. So
So-
it's probably me.
Well,
it's not knowing what the
short answer
process
is,
Yeah.
short answer is in the revenue, you're gonna have interest, that's not on that's not on these tourism sheets.
Yep.
That's one of the answers, but I'll let you know what else is in
Okay,
there, but that's
great.
short answer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We received over $2 million in, I think it was 2021, maybe for the opera funds. And we initially had that money earmarked for the public dock as well as the Waterway Boulevard project. Because federal government required that those funds be obligated, and by mean obligated, we had to have a contract on those funds by December 31st. We did not have a contract on Waterway, for the construction of Waterway on December 31st. So we have reallocated those funds for the playground, and we're going to use those funds just so we won't lose them, because they had to be obligated. That's all I have.
Thank you, Deborah. Next item is procurement. Douglas, you want to take, we got fireworks, then a number of just budgeted expenditure items that are listed on your agenda, so you want to?
Yes, first one, the discussion of the 4th of July fireworks. You have in your packet the city sought bids and received one bid from the contractor we've previously used. The cost for the upcoming year is $40,000 plus $250 of permitting fees. They have also provided the next 3 years. The contract would only be for 2025, but we have the pricing for the next 2 years.
Heck of a presentation they put together for a fireworks show.
They're into.
Very thorough.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a show.
They're into big show, I think. And I would just say that we do need to get this commitment if we're going to do it, which I think we understand that we are. We need to go ahead and have this commitment in place to be ready for the 4th of July. I would just say, as a kind of a side note, the Environmental Advisory Committee is discussing alternatives, more environmentally friendly alternatives to fireworks shows. They talked a little bit about, if that could be fully vetted and researched in time for this 4th of July. I think they've concluded that it really can't be. So they're going to work on alternatives for council to consider in the future, but from.
What kind of alternatives?
So the most common one has been the drone shows, and this started before the Folly Beach, as you all probably are
Folly
aware.
Beach.
There was- Folly Beach had the same idea, and they did have a drone fall There was another one, I think, in Orlando.
Orlando.
Yeah, that kind of went wrong. So there are also other kind of light shows, laser shows. And the issue and that they're collecting information on is centered around the amount of debris ending up in the ocean, on the beach. And it's considerable. So it could be, it could be a modification in how the operators shoot fireworks, where they're shot from. Those are the type considerations that'll be, that they'll dig into to see if there's a better, more environmentally friendly alternative for you all to consider.
That's future years.
But for this year, I think we're suggesting that you all look at the bid that's in your packet, consider it at the council meeting.
Okay.
We also have a number of reports, these are expenditures, but that are in the budget and between 20,000 and, 10,000 and 25,000. This work has been done. This is ditch restructuring work done by Seawee Construction, which was the primary subcontractor that did work at 41st for the city, that outfall project. They were the primary subcontractor. They did tremendous work for us in the areas identified in the agenda. This is work that previously and kind of historically had been done by EDs. There's been a challenge with getting EDs to perform their work. So the public works staff has been trying to find alternatives and has been very happy with that work. So we're glad to have that work done. Going to go right into capital
Yeah, keep
projects
rocking.
updates?
Yep. Thank you.
So you have in your packet a pretty exhaustive list of everything that we have going on. I would just hit a few highlights. First one is the Waterway Boulevard multi-use path. As you all will recall, the first portion of this project is contemplated to being done in conjunction with the Wild Dunes Golf Course work. They believe that work will start in March, is their timeframe. Thomas and Hutton, our engineer, is working feverishly with their golf course contractor to determine the cost of the work that we want to have them done. We expect to have that ready for you to consider at your council meeting. And we've talked about this all along, but that is kind of a one-time opportunity to be coordinated with that contractor. So time will be of the essence on that portion of that project. There will then be additional parts of that project to make it complete, and we don't anticipate those happening until we obviously have permits in hand and the season winds down, which would be next winter, so basically a year from now.
But we are looking like we're tracking to be able to keep up with Wild Dunes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, assuming that that we can live with the pricing that they submit to us between now and your next meeting. Next one I wanted to mention was the public dock and the green space. As Deborah mentioned to you, this funding source changed a bit to be completely the full 1.7 million being allocated from the ARPA funds for the reasons she stated. Would also say that project is 99% complete, still a handful of punch list items remaining to get that 100% complete, and we have a ribbon cutting for that project scheduled for February 7th at 10:30. Next one that is receiving a lot of attention in our offices is the Isle of Palms County Park emergency access. You'll recall that you all approved the contract with True Luck Construction. We're still working with them to get that contract executed, and we want to hold a coordination meeting with the county staff and True Luck. So we're still working to get that done. That project too really has a kind of a hard start and stop to be done in February. and the county park is contemplating shutting down the park during that project. Next on the list, beach access path improvements. The boardwalks at 42nd Avenue and 52nd Avenue really are completing this week. They too are kind of 95% complete. There's a little bit of paving work and handrail work left at 46th, I believe. So they're very, very close. And then the next two are starting at 26A and 36A, and they are just kind of starting those projects this week.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Sure.
I had two residents that contacted me just in the last few days regarding 36A. And, I've seen the portalet up there, they've seen it blocked off, but there's no explanation visible to the public as to what's going on. They obviously didn't read the mayor's message, because it's very clearly in the mayor's message, and that's what I advised them to do, but I also explained to them what was going on. But at the risk of, the criticism of being the Isle of Signs, maybe we do need to put something there to just briefly to let residents know what's going on and what the particular timing is, because we know we want all that done before spring is upon us anyway.
Crime scene tape's not good enough?
I know, yeah. No, the tape and the portalet just
Doesn't
didn't do
work.
it for them, no.
Excuse me, if I may, what, is anything in the works for 34A?
34A is complete.
It was done?
Yep.
Okay, good.
So we could certainly do that. We'll get a sign made that just explains to the public what's going on and where they can access the beach. Next on the list is the beach maintenance and restoration. You all will recall that the staff came to you in early December, got your kind of blessings on 200 additional bags. In the time since that meeting, we needed to put out 100, almost kind of immediately in front of Ocean Club and Seascape. We are putting an additional 40 out this week in a low area on Beechwood East between, I think it's 11 and 13. So that work will be happening this week. So there's still a few left in what you all approved in December, but there's also, I think, a need right behind that to continue placement of those bags. So I expect that we'll probably be asking for additional funding at your next meeting. The rest of these, I don't think there's a heck of a lot to report. I did, in your packet, there is an old update for 21st Avenue. More work is happening on that project with the county staff, and they are anticipating going out to bid and having that work completed by March.
What about the underground power lines? Is that moving along?
Moving?
That's next facilities.
Yes.
Meeting, we're dealing with that.
So
The
there's
one
an
on
active,
14th, yeah.
yeah, there's an active project that I don't think has progressed there at 14th. Kind of at a overall level, the Public Facilities Committee has requested to speak with the Dominion representatives on a master planning of all of the of undergrounding all those power lines and allowing the city to prioritize which projects are done based on cost, reliability of service, aesthetics, kind of give us a laundry list that would let us kind of pick and choose so that we could better allocate the funds and our time and get those projects done. Hopefully a little quicker, but that really is pushing uphill to get, those projects are solely driven by Dominion, and they're challenging to get done.
Yeah, and John, was your question specific to 14th or the broader?
Both. I was
Yeah.
going to lead a second question into the broader, but it sounds like he took care of it. But I'm glad you're talking to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other question I have is on 41st, down by the marina, the sewer group was gonna be putting in.
Yeah.
Is that, I see some activity done.
Yes, they have, they are there on site, but at my last, I don't think anything has happened. That we were expecting them to happen, expecting them to start in the end of December, and I'm assuming that the holidays got interfered with their schedule. But that should be starting any day now. That's all I have, Mayor.
Other questions for Douglas projects? Douglas, thank you. Drinking from a fire hose,
Yep.
man.
Yep.
Next item is strategic plan, policy initiatives, and priorities. First item is under environmental, discussion of recommendations from the Environmental Advisory Committee regarding beach trash receptacles. You've got a couple of pages in your packet. Douglas, you want to update
Yeah,
us
so
here?
I would just kind of summarize this in saying that there have been a number of issues with how the city has been collecting that beach trash for a long time. They're without lids, those cans. They are collected from the beach. There is a piece of machinery that's used that is only made by one manufacturer, and it's challenging to get parts. It's challenging to keep those machines going. So there's a number of issues with the way that we have been handling this beach debris. And our existing contract is set to expire this September. So the staff had been thinking and kind of noodling on alternatives. We brought it to the Environmental Advisory Committee for their suggestions because there was a feeling that it did kind of, that would be a good place for some research to be done on the issue. They actually did a pretty neat pilot program of taking the cans completely off the beach at 2 different accesses, putting them up by the road, and measuring, did that have an impact on the amount of trash that was happening on the beach. I think the conclusion of that study was that it did not really have a meaningful impact. That is what we heard historically, that if you take them off the beach, put them up at the road, then the beach will become littered. The group found that that wasn't necessarily the case, at least with these 2 test spots.
You also give people a place to put the garbage on the streets that they don't have currently.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
That's a big,
Yep.
I mean, it seems to me like that's been a big hole.
Yep. So what is in your packet is kind of the culmination of these efforts, and it's a suggestion that the city generally collect the trash on the roadside in traditional trash enclosures with lids, with traditional trash equipment, not the yellow buggy that we've historically seen. I think the committee felt like it was probably important to leave some on the beach at the most active areas, like the front beach area. I think they felt like there is so much trash there that kind of need it, as many as you can have. So there's a plan to leave some there. And then there's a breakdown in your packet of where at each beach access the group thinks that cans would be effective. Robert, with the Public Works staff, has been working with Trident, who is doing a very similar project for the town of Kiowa with their collection. So he's been kind of going site to site with them, saying, how could you collect at this site? How could you collect at that site? So it's a pretty thorough investigation and deep dive on where to put the cans and how to do it. If there is general agreement that this is a good path forward, our next steps would be to publish an RFP, that's another benefit, is this is now work that we think all debris contractors should be able to do. And with the old system, you had to have that piece of machinery, you had to kind of be already doing it to realistically be able to bid. So we think we're gonna open up
Is that our
the
equipment or
opportunity.
the vendor's equipment?
It's the vendor's equipment.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it looks
I think
good.
we ought to support it because the yellow cans, every time there's a wind, you see them rolling down the beach.
Yep.
And we have to move them off during storm season.
I'm a little confused, I'm slow, but where are these going to be located at on the beach access?
So currently, and there's a matrix showing where they would be, but currently they're all the way out on the beach
yeah,
end.
I get that.
At some locations, they're gonna be just on the landward side of the dune, so still close to the beach, but behind the dune. In those locations, a staff person is going to have to go down the beach access and pull it out, just like
To
they
the
do
street,
for,
yeah.
to the street for collection. And then there will be other locations where they will be very close to the roadside of the beach access. So it's going to be a little bit of a hybrid, where not every access will be identical
Okay.
based on kind of the use of those.
And again, the data showed that people would carry trash all the way up to the street as opposed to just leaving it on the beach.
That, you could say the data showed that we did 2 beach accesses for 2 weeks. So I would say a very small sampling of the data did show that.
I think from an efficiency standpoint, it sounds great. My concern is though, where you got fairly long beach access, are they just gonna leave their stuff out at the beach as opposed to bringing it up
I
to
mean,
the street? I don't know. That
we-
seems like they would.
We talked extensively about that, and I think that kind of what we saw, and if you really think about it, I mean, the type of person that's going to just leave trash on the beach is, most people are sitting down by the water and they've still got to walk a decent ways to a trash can. So the type of person that's going to collect and dispose of their trash is going to do it, and they're just going to take it with their chairs and everything else when they leave the
Yeah,
beach.
but except for
You're-
people who look at it, if they see a trash can over there, oh, there's a trash can, I'll walk over there and put it in there, as opposed to, oh, there's no trash cans, I'm just gonna leave it here. But,
We had, 49th Avenue hadn't been an issue, and it's 150 yards from the beach trash to the water.
Right, and that's kind of
And
the
so
thought,
they're
yeah.
already schlepping, so just
Now,
continue to schlep.
in the really busy parts of the beach, that's where we decided that it was worth it to have them on the beach, just because of the sheer traffic and the number of people, and, it's not a perfect system. I mean, I was at a beach and found a different beach and was running and found a plastic bottle, and I ended up having to carry it, with me the rest of my run. But the alternative is it blows, these things, a little bit of wind, they blow, then you have water coming up, and then you have all of that trash, as opposed to the rare person that just wants to litter. So,
The only other kind of data, for lack of a better term, we got was the town of Kiowa has always had the cans down by the beach. The high tides got into their corrals, they have corrals like this, ruined the corrals. They moved all of their cans to the roadside. We talked to their public works department about, did you see a change in the amount of trash, on the beach? Their staff advocated for leaving them on the roadside, and felt like there had not been any increase in the trash, but there was a bit of public outcry for the sake of convenience, and they ended up putting them back at the end of those beach paths, but they're servicing them still from the roadside by rolling them back.
Off the butlers at Kiowa.
Box it up nicely.
So again, if you all are agreeable to this, and I don't know that you necessarily need an action item on your agenda, but
Yeah.
I think with kind of general head nods, our next step would be to go out to bid, and we do want to do that sooner rather than later
Prior to
with,
season, yeah.
to let new vendors get in place upon the expiration in September.
Kate, anything else from committee view?
I mean, I think it's definitely, I think it'll be an improvement. I mean,
Sure look a lot better.
it's going to be sad to not see those yellow trash cans. Yellow palm tree ones.
A lot of emotion with those yellow cans.
Yes.
Some people love them.
Yeah, I
There
think.
will be an
I'm
emotion.
correct.
I was going to say, we can sell them.
The ends of these corrals that we're seeing in the picture have already been placed on the beach. So if anybody
At
wants
some,
to see
yes.
where the corral's going, it's going where the new fancy sign is.
That's
It's right
correct.
behind.
Yeah, and there will be signage.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, the signage will, and we're hoping that this is going to prevent people from dropping, because there's been issues with people leaving beach chairs and other things that can't fit in the trash can. And so we will have signage, but it'll all be part of the corral, so it won't be you know, it'll all look,
Pack it in, pack it out.
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
I like the plan. You good, Douglas?
Yep.
All right. All right, Douglas, listen up. Personnel update on the city administrator search. So I think it was our October meeting, we selected a recruiting firm to help us with the search the week of Thanksgiving. They had it posted out there on the World Wide Web. So we had 79 applicants from Thanksgiving week to the end of the year. So 79 applicants. Our recruiting firm winnowed that down between written and phone interviews to 5. Admin committee met last week or week before, last week maybe. So we have Zoom interviews scheduled with those 5 for the 23rd and 24th of this month, so next Thursday and Friday. So we're moving, in government world, we're moving at light speed on this topic. So the plan is to have those Zoom interviews next week, get it down to maybe 3-ish finalists. We'll have on-site with the committee, on-site with council, on-site with department heads. So we'll move as fast as people's schedules will allow us. So John or Jimmy, anything to add to that?
That covers it.
All right. Douglas, anything for you to add to
No,
that? You good?
that covers it, Mayor, thank you.
Next item is discussion of description, pay grade, and requirements for future financial position. At the committee meeting, we also talked about, and in our budget, we have a staff accountant position to add to help out Deborah. You recall, we put it in the budget for 1/1 of this year, so the grade that it's at, I think it's a 6. Not that that means anything to you, but roughly it's a $50,000 a year job. So we have $25,000 in the budget this year that was scheduled to start 1/1. Conversation at admin committee was, let's look at elevating that job just a bit, maybe to more of an analyst type position. So that would take it up a job grade, take it up salary wise to $68,000 to $86,000. I think for this current budget year, by the time we finish the job grade, do some recruitment, have somebody on site, we'll be fine from a financial standpoint, from a budget for this current fiscal year. We'll just need to adjust future years from that. So Janice, Deborah, Douglas, John, anything? Scott? Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I think this is actually, as we talked about, has been in the budget. This is the second budget cycle that this position's been in there. I think since Debbie Suggs left, actually, we added that in that same conversation, same timeframe. And what we talked about at that point was a financial analyst that, did more. And there's a difference between the two, and this is more of a very entry level, the way it's written today, very entry level. So we talked about beefing up the requirements to be, 4 to 5 years, and even have a preference of a CPA or CPA candidate as a preference. So beefing this up just a little bit to be able to have a little bit more experience, especially around the financial analysts and modeling and taking on some of the things that we're currently contracting out to third parties.
Yeah, and my only comment was going to be, I think that if we advertise it as a financial analyst, because I think you attract a very different financial talent than, and career track desire than, and skill set than a staff accountant.
Yeah, and Jimmy, go ahead now.
No, I had a question during the committee, and maybe I missed the answer, but where are we going to put them?
Details, man.
Yeah, I mean,
Goodness.
Are you going to put them in a parking lot? Really, where are you going to put them?
To be determined.
To be determined.
Could use the conference room in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, I
There's
got
an
an
office in
answer.
there.
Got an answer.
So, yeah, there's an answer. Could be the mayor's office. We'll do something. We'll figure
We
it out.
might do that, Mayor.
Yeah. And Scott, to your point, I think the job grade we're looking at will be I don't know, what analyst, financial analyst as opposed to a financial. Janice, is that right? Right, yeah. So I think we will have that kind of terminology on it.
I would just like to say, and there's obviously a budget implication, and it may be that we're okay with this increase in pay grade. And I think, and John and I talked a little bit about it in the Personnel Committee meeting, but I think from the staff's perspective, it was our understanding, and we talked about the fact that this was in the budget 2 years ago. I think there was a conscious decision to not do that with Debbie going out, and delay until a new person was in that position, and then work with that new person on what they feel like the needs of this role would be. So I would say that there's maybe still a conversation for the committee to have with Deborah and the staff about, what are the kind of holes in the operation? What are the needs in terms of talent? I know that she'll take all the help she can get, but she may have input in terms of what she feels like is really lacking at the city. And so I think that's still a conversation that should be had. But certainly, we didn't want to progress with the idea of increasing a pay grade from what's in the budget that you will have approved without kind of bringing this through city council.
Yeah, I'd like to just chime in on that. I mean, I was on the committee, I think Rusty and John were at the time when we contemplated this, and the actual conversation that occurred at the time was that we were looking for a proactive, a staff accountant or accountant is going to be more of a reactive recording and keeping the books. We don't have right now a defined function. We kept talking about having headlights, having financial analysis. We just paid $25,000 to put a model together that a good financial analyst could put together. We don't have we've got non-integrated tools and modeling skill sets, and our financial tools right now don't talk to each other. So those are skill sets that when we were defining that position and the need for that position, I think it's something that we as a council decided that's something that we need for, to be able to manage down the road, and it's a visibility and we don't have right now. So, if Deborah needs additional skill set to help her do the accounting side of it, I look at it, we approved a financial analyst, we did not approve a staff accountant, and it's kind of like saying, we've got a police officer and a firefighter, they're both first responders, but, they're very different skill sets. And what I would say is that if we're going to go back to an accounting concentration, that let's take it back for a reapproval.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. To the point of you approved a financial analyst, if you look at the budget, it is as a financial analyst by title. The pay grade, though, is of a staff accountant. So we kind of
And let's
put it in.
Let's fix the pay grade. We've, it's 2 years have gone by and we've inflated all of the job grades. We
Right.
may have to revisit that. Keep up with inflation, yeah.
Well, I think we obviously should confer heavily with Deborah on this, what she
Absolutely.
needs. I'm not working with her, and we need to know what she needs.
Good, Douglas.
Yep.
Next item is other items. First two kind of go together. Discussion of updates to beach parking ordinance and discussion of resolution to change parking fees. Douglas, you want to?
Yes, and I would just preface this discussion in saying that you have in your packet a red line from Chief Cornett, and these are changes that were suggested to the council by PCI and Chief Cornett. And these are somewhat kind of housekeeping changes. There will be an additional set of changes that MAC is working on that will be in the code. Additionally, there will be, I think we know that there would be a modification in the contract with PCI to handle the administration of this work. The code changes need 2 readings before they can be enacted. So our hope is to have these changes plus MAC's changes for you for first reading this month, and then have the both code changes as well as the PCI agreement amendments ready for you to consider at your February meeting. That would kind of get everything lined up to be in effect and ready for March March when the season begins in earnest. So trying to keep these things kind of aligned and moving forward, and this is the first, I guess, of maybe 4 different parts. this change, the resolution, max ordinance changes, and the PCI change.
Contract, okay.
So the parking changes would go into effect if we have a first reading in January, second reading in February, so at the end of February.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, are you talking rates or?
Rates.
Well, the rates,
Rates can go faster.
yeah, the
So they're
rates
not
don't need
ordinance
to.
change?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's a resolution, so we could do that this council
January.
meeting.
I mean, it
Yeah.
really doesn't take effect till March 1st anyway, but.
Right.
But yeah.
So more to come on kind of both of those, but we wanted to just have you tracking to get all of that approved by the end of February.
Got it.
And I think these rates are consistent with where we left last time from a council standpoint. I see a couple of head nods. Is that fair? We haven't talked about a lot of machinations. Jimmy, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's, I looked through it and I didn't see any mention of, charging for parking in the winter, which is,
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, we did. We
There was a-
went back and forth, I think. but
No.
Took that off the table.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
So Douglas, this will be on our
Yes.
agenda for.
Yep. More for first reading, this for its one and only reading.
Got it.
And then the agreement, which will only need one vote in February.
February. John, does that answer you? Last item is discussion of engaging a federal lobbyist. I think you'll recall, I can't remember which meeting we were at, talking about, we've had the state lobbyist for, this is our fourth year, I guess, with our state lobbyist. We talked about doing this at a federal level as well. Talked about, Douglas and I both have had conversations with our IOP Water and Sewer Commission, because we're looking to join forces with those guys, meaning split the cost with them for a federal lobbyist. This is not a budgeted item, just wanted to have a conversation around the timing and kind of your thoughts on it. My understanding is at a federal level, budget requests are starting to happen the first couple of weeks in February, so, our timing may or may not be right for laying some groundwork this year, but we talked to our state lobbyist around, their role with this, and they have an affiliation with the firm NDC that they've provided a bid for us. There's been a group through the Water and Sewer Commission come forth. There's also an island resident that started their own firm that has some interest. So I think, some of this needs to go back to a committee just to vet what it's going to look like from a bid standpoint. But I would like to hear, just from a timing standpoint, I think we're going to have a real hard time pushing this through very fast. If this goes to the admin committee, I mean, we're knee-deep in the city administrator search right now, but just your feel from a timing or, yes, go forth. The Water and Sewer Commission met last week or the week before and kind of gave a head nod to keep moving forward, so that's really, really all we're looking for here. Jimmy?
Well, the initial impression is the return on investment for the state lobbyists has been fantastic, from what I understand.
Yeah.
They've done a really good job for us. They're on the inside. They're former legislators themselves, and I would say hopefully we will have the same kind of success with a federal lobbyist. And I would like to have a discussion maybe in expanding this to a county lobbyist also.
Scott, you go.
I'm in total support of trying to find a way to get some representation up in Washington and get some money down here.
I mean, we're a rounding error at the DC level,
No,
so.
we got to get some attention.
Yeah.
Typically, as I understand it, when a municipality looks at federal lobbyists, they're going after them because the state's not cooperating in some way. So, does that strain some sort of relationship we may have at the state level? Do we think, it's just something to think
Yeah.
about.
I'm thinking
Does
it's
that
different
compromise
funds.
anything that we have going?
Different funding buckets we're going
Yeah,
after.
from a funding-
and,
yeah.
The state would be thrilled if we got money from the federal.
Yeah, but, they might be,
Yeah.
But on the other
That's
hand,
fair.
they may
Somebody
be
else's money.
territorial
I
about
would
it
just
also.
ask and I don't know if it's a one pager, but we really define what it is we want them to go get.
Go after,
get.
yeah. Well, I think similar to what we did with our state lobbyists in September, maybe, and outline the 4 or 5 priorities that we put on their plate. and, attached amounts to it for this year.
And it'd probably be helpful to do that before we actually looked at bids, because different firms specialize in different
Yeah.
areas and things, so if we're looking at one particular, two or three different particular things,
Yeah.
one firm would be better suited for that than another one.
Well, and I think each of the three firms we've looked at a very high level so far, each brings something different to the table for sure. At the state level, the good part has been, it's been state allocated budget money. So there's not, reporting requirements and grant restrictions tied to it typically. I think once we shift into the federal level, that's going to be a different ballgame. That will, that's also a resource need that we're going to have. And some of these firms bring that to the table, some don't, some charge for it, or they all charge for it. But, it just depends on what we're looking for. So bless you.
Yeah, well, from the county standpoint, I think we were subject to Yellow Book again this year, or for the first time in quite a while, and it definitely will if we're getting federal funds. But that's something to talk to the auditors about. Did you remember it was Yellow Book? They had to do Yellow Book this year? I'm pretty sure they did. Doug, do you remember? Okay.
I don't even
Just
know what it
additional
is.
costs,
Yeah.
that's all. It's not, totally material. Very good.
So, John, this, to me, would fall to the admin committee from a oversight vetting. And we could spend some time at the next council meeting, identifying, to y'all's points, what we would want to go after
Yeah.
from a bucket or a project type standpoint. Is that fair?
Council at February or the 28th?
Let's put it on the draft January
28th.
agenda, because there's a lot building there, but, I think we can keep it moving. I think that would be great. So from a legislative report update, session started today, actually at the state level. So we have sent our state lobbyist our priority list, amounts attached to it. They have their marching orders from a policy standpoint from us, so I think we're in decent shape with them. Our next meeting is the workshop on February 11th. No further business.
Motion, excuse me.
Katie? Oh, sorry. I heard a breath, man. I thought there was something coming. Go ahead, Jimmy.
That was me. I was going. Motion to adjourn.